There's a cave system in the Grand Canyon that the National Park Service doesn't want you to know about. It's marked as restricted on every map. No hiking trails lead to it. Park rangers won't discuss it. And in 1909, the Smithsonian Institution received artifacts from this cave that were so controversial they allegedly buried the entire discovery and denied it ever happened. The cave supposedly contained Egyptian hieroglyphics, Buddhist statues, and advanced tools that shouldn't exist in North America. If the 1909 Arizona Gazette article is accurate, explorers found evidence of a sophisticated ancient civilization 2,000 feet underground in a cave system that could house 50,000 people. The Smithsonian says this never happened, but researchers have been trying to find this cave for over a century, and the government keeps the entire area off limits. On April 5, 1909, the Arizona Gazette published a front-page story titled "Explorations in Grand Canyon. Remarkable Finds Indicate Ancient People Migrated from Orient." The article described explorer G.E. Kincaid, who claimed to discover a massive cave system while rafting the Colorado River. According to the article, Kincaid found a cave entrance 2,000 feet above the river in a sheer cliff wall. Inside, he allegedly discovered passageways leading to chambers filled with artifacts, copper tools, stone tablets with hieroglyphics, statues resembling Egyptian and Buddhist art, and mummies stored in crypts. The article stated that Professor S.A.E. Jordan of the Smithsonian Institution led a follow-up expedition with a team of archaeologists. They allegedly confirmed the findings and reported that the cave system was enormous, containing multiple levels. It described architectural features, rooms carved with precision, ventilation shafts, and storage chambers. It mentioned specific artifacts with enough detail that it would be difficult to fabricate without archaeological knowledge. Here's what makes researchers suspicious. The Smithsonian has a documented history of losing or hiding controversial artifacts that don't fit established historical narratives. Skeletons of unusually tall individuals found in Ohio mounds in the 1880s, mentioned in official Smithsonian reports, have disappeared from their collections. Artifacts suggesting pre-Columbian contact between Old World and New World civilizations have been quietly shelved. The institution's official position is that no such expedition occurred. But newspaper archives confirm the Arizona Gazette published the article. The level of detail suggests either genuine discovery or an incredibly elaborate hoax. And if it was a hoax, why hasn't the Smithsonian ever explained what actually happened? Why not identify the real Kincaid or explain how the story was fabricated? The most suspicious element is the location. The article placed the cave in an area that is now heavily restricted by the National Park Service. Researchers attempting to explore the region described in the 1909 article are denied permits. Park Service officials state the restrictions are for cultural sensitivity and protection of archaeological resources. What resources are being protected? The area described in the 1909 article is in the eastern Grand Canyon, near the confluence of the Colorado River and Havasu Canyon. This region is managed by the Hualapai tribe and is heavily restricted. Access requires special permits that are rarely granted, and even researchers with legitimate archaeological credentials are denied entry. Geological surveys confirm that extensive cave systems exist in this area. The Redwall limestone formation, which dominates this section of the canyon, is riddled with caves created by water erosion over millions of years. Some of these caves are massive, large enough to contain the structures described in the 1909 article. But here's what researchers have found in accessible areas nearby. Split twig figurines, carbon dated to 2000 BC, have been discovered in Grand Canyon caves, proving that ancient peoples occupied cave systems in the region. Granaries, pictographs, and artifacts from ancestral Puebloan cultures have been found throughout the canyon. The idea that caves were used for habitation and storage isn't controversial, it's documented fact. What remains controversial is whether any of these caves contain Egyptian or Asian artifacts. The mainstream archaeological position is that no transoceanic contact occurred before Columbus. Any evidence suggesting otherwise contradicts decades of established theory. This is why researchers believe the Smithsonian would have motivation to suppress such a discovery, not from conspiracy, but from institutional resistance to paradigm-shifting evidence. The most explosive claim in the 1909 article was the presence of Egyptian hieroglyphics. If true, this would prove that Egyptians crossed the Atlantic or Pacific thousands of years before Columbus and established a presence in North America. This would rewrite everything we know about ancient history, but here's what makes this less crazy than it sounds. In the 1970s, Dr. Barry Fell, a Harvard professor, documented what he claimed were Egyptian hieroglyphics carved into rocks in several North American locations, including sites in Nevada and Oklahoma. Mainstream archaeologists dismissed his findings as misidentified Native American petroglyphs or natural rock formations. However, some of Fell's translations were verified by Egyptologists as genuine hieroglyphic script. The controversy was whether they were ancient or carved by modern hoaxers. The scientific community never satisfactorily explained how multiple sites across North America contained what appeared to be authentic hieroglyphics if no ancient contact occurred. Additionally, cocaine and tobacco have been found in Egyptian mummies. Both plants are native only to the Americas. Published in 1992 by German toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova, was initially dismissed as contamination, but subsequent testing confirmed the presence of these substances in multiple mummies. This proves some form of transoceanic contact existed. The question is who traveled and when. The Grand Canyon Cave, if it exists as described, would provide physical evidence of this contact. Not just artifacts that could be explained away, but an entire settlement proving sustained presence. That's why the discovery would be world-changing, and why institutions might have incentive to suppress it. For over a century, researchers, explorers, and conspiracy theorists have attempted to locate the cave described in the 1909 article. None have succeeded, or at least none have publicly admitted success. The most serious attempt was by explorer John Rhodes in the 1990s. Using the descriptions from the 1909 article, he identified a likely location on the eastern wall of Marble Canyon. When he applied for permits to explore the area, the National Park Service denied his request. He attempted to access the area without permits and was intercepted by park rangers who threatened arrest. Researcher David Hatcher Childress investigated the story extensively in the 2000s. He interviewed Hualapai tribal elders who confirmed that tribal oral history includes stories of ancient ones who lived in canyon caves and left mysterious artifacts. The elders stated that certain caves are forbidden, not by the Park Service, but by tribal law because they contain sacred sites that must not be disturbed. Here's the problem with finding the cave. The Grand Canyon contains over 1,000 known caves. Most are unmapped and inaccessible without technical climbing equipment. The cave described in 1909 was 2,000 feet above the river in a sheer cliff face. Reaching it would require rappelling from the canyon rim or climbing from the river, both extremely dangerous in that terrain. And the entire area is restricted, making legal exploration impossible. But here's what's suspicious. In 2009, the centennial of the alleged discovery, a group of researchers using ground-penetrating radar claimed to identify a large void in the cliff face, matching the 1909 description. They applied for permits to investigate. The Park Service denied the permits and stated that the area contained sensitive cultural resources that could not be disturbed. When pressed for details about what resources exist if no cave exists, officials refused to comment. Here are the possibilities, and all of them are significant. Scenario 1, the 1909 article was complete fiction. But then, why are the areas described heavily restricted? Why hasn't the Smithsonian provided a definitive explanation? Why do geological surveys confirm massive cave systems exist exactly where the article placed them? Scenario 2, Kincaid found a cave with Native American artifacts that he misidentified as Egyptian. This is the mainstream explanation. But the article described hieroglyphics. statues, and architectural features distinct from known Native American cultures. Either Kincaid was lying, or he saw something genuinely anomalous. Scenario 3. The cave exists, contains controversial artifacts, and was deliberately buried by the Smithsonian to protect established historical narratives. This is the conspiracy theory, but it's not without precedent. Institutions have suppressed controversial findings before. The question is whether this is one of those cases. Scenario 4. The cave exists and contains sacred indigenous sites that have nothing to do with Egyptians, but the area is restricted for legitimate cultural protection reasons. This would explain the restrictions without requiring conspiracy, but it doesn't explain why the Smithsonian claims no expedition ever occurred. What we know for certain, the 1909 article exists. The area described is heavily restricted. Cave systems exist in that location. Researchers attempting to investigate are denied access. The Smithsonian denies any record of the discovery, and over a century later, no one has definitively proven what's in those forbidden caves. The truth is buried somewhere in the Grand Canyon, literally, whether it's evidence of ancient transoceanic contact, sacred indigenous sites, or nothing at all. The restriction of the area and the institutional denial ensure that the mystery persists. Until someone gains access to those caves, legally or otherwise, the 1909 discovery remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing unsolved mysteries. And the fact that the government works so hard to keep people away from that specific area only makes researchers more convinced there's something there worth hiding.